Hey, what is up? This is the Leafs Convo podcast, back in business for Oak Ridge Ford in London, Ontario, oakridgeford.com. It is May 28, 2020. I'm Norm with Mike. The Convo lives, and NHL hockey soon will in the form of a 24-team tournament. It has been confirmed, Mr. A. The Leafs will draw the Blue Jackets in the first round of this bonanza. Good morning.
Good morning, Norm. Well, first, the announcement. I think Gary Bettman and Bill Daly did a pretty great job in terms of laying out a plan. Not everybody is going to be pleased with every aspect of it, but I think they thought of the players, they thought of, the teams that were sort of borderline playoff teams, and they didn't lock themselves into specific dates, which I think right now with the uncertainty of everything going on was a smart thing to do. But I'm optimistic because everybody seems to be like looking forward and, moving the ball down the field a little bit in terms of, the play getting started in August. I think if, the trends continue regarding, the positive testing throughout the US and Canada, and then going down, that it's possible that we could see hockey as soon as probably mid-July.
Yeah, there's only so much you can do with what you have at your disposal right now. And remember, this is a binational operation that requires the cooperation of provincial governments, state officials, and authorities. So conceptually, this is a great idea and something we all think is going to come to fruition. Logistically, I wouldn't say it's a nightmare, but there are certainly lots of things to figure out between now and the first puck drop in quite some time. This is the Leafs Convo podcast for Oak Ridge Ford. Norm with Mike Thorny on Twitter at 52 since Stanley. Wow, he's really rubbing it in. Thorny's a good guy, though. I think he's out of Texas. Of all the draws for Leafs Forever in this 24-teamer, is CBJ about as tough a draw as the Leafs could have gotten?
You have to look at it this way. If the regular season had played out and they made the playoffs, they likely would have played Tampa. So that would have been a much more difficult matchup. I think stylistically, the Leafs and Tampa play the same type of game, so it would have been a wild offensive type of series, and I think that plays into the Leafs' tendency. So they may have had a better chance to win. Columbus is a shutdown defensive team, plays the John Tortorella type of game that was effective in beating Tampa Bay in the first round last year. That traditionally has given the Leafs a lot of problems. They don't score a lot of goals. So I think when this best of 5 or best of 7 or whatever length of series it is, they're going to be 2-1, 3-2 games. They're going to be tight. And I don't know whether that benefits the Leafs. I think it's a tough matchup. I mean, if they didn't want a tough matchup, then they should have done better since in the regular season. And they were very inconsistent throughout the regular season.
When I encounter people on the street and they don't call the police on me, we do end up talking about hockey. And I'm getting a lot of questions as to the locations for these hub centers where the games will take place, where the activity will center around. If the idea is to stay away from heavily populated places, then Toronto wouldn't even be in consideration.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be the case,
No.
Norm, because, I mean, the list of 10 cities included Chicago, included Los Angeles, included Vegas.
Yeah, what happened?
Which apparently
what happened? Initially, we were talking about smaller venues perhaps just off the beaten path a little bit when it comes to the major metropolises and how the entire league is interwoven that way. Now we're talking about LA and Chicago, but not Toronto. Toronto being the capital of the game, we all know that. So if you're going to the big cities and you want a great place to host an event like this, Toronto would be the de facto number one.
Well, those isolated neutral sites that were talked about originally, like Manchester, New Hampshire, and North Dakota. I mean, that they don't have the hotel rooms, and in the Yukon. I mean, come on, that wasn't gonna happen. And John Tavares on his conference call yesterday basically said, we want to go someplace that, yes, we want to be safe, we want to be sequestered away from the public, but we also want to go someplace where we can actually like live our lives and have like some amenities to do
Wow.
things. And that's why, right, that's why Vegas makes sense. I mean, there's been a talk about the Orleans Casino, which is off the strip in Vegas, has a practice facility there, and they can practice in that arena and then play at the I think it's T-Mobile Arena where the Golden Knights play.
Hmm.
I think there's been talk about Edmonton, and they've put together a great presentation. Vancouver, where the COVID rates have cratered, have gone
Yeah.
down significantly. I think the rates have gone down in Toronto as well. But with Toronto and with the other Canadian cities, the 14-day quarantine is a non-starter. Bill Daley was on TSN a couple days ago and says if there's not basically some sort of special dispensation to allow travel back and forth, which they may need to do eventually, then then all these teams coming to a Canadian hub having to wait 2 weeks. That's
Mm.
not going to happen. If they have to do, they got special permission, essential status from the U.S. government and Donald Trump. They didn't get that from Trudeau, and if they don't, then I think Vancouver, Edmonton, or Toronto are completely
Yeah,
out
I
of
have a
it.
feeling this is going to be U.S. located, and that's okay. And geez, NHL players will account for probably 60%, if not more, in the revitalization of the Las Vegas economy. All those guys are millionaires with nothing else to do. I don't know, play a few slots, a little bit of
Mm.
blackjack, or if you're part of the Jello family, canasta.
Pinochle,
Yeah,
cribbage.
cribbage and pinochle. Hey, how was that John Tavares State of the Union? Was that pretty heavy? Was that like the United Nations or the World Health Organization? Was that on the level of importance with a lot of the other big announcements we've been having to deal with the last several weeks and months?
Well, I mean, he was on the return to play committee, and it sort of popped up out of nowhere. I know a lot of teams like the Sabres had their end of season pressers and things
Mm-hmm.
of that nature, and
The
obviously a
Sabres
lot
had
of the
their
teams
end
that
of
are that,
season presser.
yeah, yeah, they did.
We were
They had to.
I
They're
know,
not part.
but it's like, guys, we
The,
can't get any closure during this whole COVID thing until the Sabres have their final say.
well, we didn't know
This is
what
hilarious.
we didn't know what
That's
scenario
awesome.
we didn't know what
Yeah, I know.
ridiculous scenario that was available that would have put them in the playoffs. But no, I think that Shanahan and Dubas and Tavares put together a united front and
Yeah.
answered all the questions that Shanahan was focusing specifically on Toronto as a
Of
hub.
course.
And I think he thinks
Yeah.
there's a chance, but again, like I said, if there's not some help from the Canadian government, it's not going to happen. Dubas was more focusing on the team and what their preparations will be for Columbus,
Sure.
and I think Tavares was looking at the players
Yeah,
aspect.
under other circumstances, Toronto is the place. I mean, they host these World Cup mock-ups in Toronto for a reason. It's the capital of the game. We can go on about it ad nauseum and act like a bunch of fanboys, but it's just true. Nick Robertson added to the Leafs taxi squad. So is he the straw that stirs this Stanley Cup drink?
Well, I don't even know if he's gonna see the ice, but it's very interesting that a kid that was drafted, I think it was 53rd overall in the second round, had this whirlwind season where he led the OHL in scoring. He played great for Team USA on their first line at the World Juniors. Um, you know, that was not expected. I mean, they recognized his talent and his abilities when they drafted him late in the second round. But I think he had a grade A year, and I think he's on the radar for the Leafs next season. I don't know whether they're going to want to insert a 19-year-old kid with no pro experience into a playoff situation. But I think at the absolute worst, they want him to sort of become acclimated to a playoff scenario, see how the team acts. The Marlies have done that with players that they've brought in, just let
Mm-hmm.
them hang around the team and see what everything is all about. But he's on the radar, especially with the fact that we don't know what's going to happen
Mm-hmm.
with the CHL. We don't know what's going to happen with the AHL. We don't know what's going to happen with the NCAA. The only league that has really put out anything about when they're going to
Mm-hmm.
play is the KHL, and they say they're going to open in September. So everything is up in the air, and I think the Leafs see Robertson as a contributor down the road, and they want to do the most and best for him to get him acclimate
Yeah,
into
why
the
not?
pro game.
Matthew Tanti, Inside Community at youtube.com/the Leafs Convo, wondering about Nick Robertson. Hopefully that answered your question, Matthew. OG's converts were 1 million plus listens on all platforms. Thank you very much. It's been quite the ride, and the ride continues. It's about to get pretty exciting here over the next several months. Please like and subscribe on the YouTube platform. We're around Twitter, Facebook too, but YouTube is certainly the hub. We're looking for a few more listens and plays on our podcast platforms. Type in the Leafs Combo in your Google search box. We are on every major podcast platform there is. Eric Diaz wondering, how much should the rest of the league fear a finally healthy and rested Leafs team?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I think everybody in the league recognizes the offensive firepower of the Leafs. And it was funny because Kevin Allen on our Buzzcast last Friday said that he thinks that teams that are offensive are going to have an advantage over teams that are defensive, because defense is more work and offense is more innate talent. And I see that possibility, but the same problems that the Leafs had during the regular season are still present, and will be still present during the playoffs. Defensively, I can't say they're inept, but I think they're underachieving. I don't know if they're structured the right way. And now they're going to have a full blue line with Riley, with Muzzin. Mikheyev will be back. So everybody except Andreas Janssen will be available. That's a positive, because they really didn't have that all year. But whether they will succeed because everybody is back, I mean, everybody's going to be back except Josh Anderson for Columbus. Everybody's going to be back for Tampa Bay. It's a even playing field when it comes to injuries. So that advantage is everybody's
24
advantage.
will vie for the cup. The clock is ticking on the countdown towards puck drop. Each team will be rested, ready, and revived. Which of the 24 who will vie for Lord Stanley's mug will be there in the end to hoist it? Mike, before we go, tell our OGs and converts what you're working on and where they can find it.
Today, I'm going to write about, besides Nick Robertson, who the players on that taxi squad that the Leafs will carry will be. I think, and I'll just preview it a little bit, guys like Kenny Agostino who have NHL experience. They'll probably carry 5 or 6 extra forwards, 2 or 3 extra defensemen, depending on the limitations that the NHL puts in front of them, and probably another goaltender or 2. So that might mean Casimir Kaskisuo and Joseph Wall, both goalies from the Marlies. So, they're going to carry a taxi squad, but the indications of who they're going to carry and who they're not going to carry, apparently, like, the Marlies did exit interviews when the AHL season was canceled. Some people were interviewed, like Jeremy Bracco, and they basically said, if you're being interviewed, then your season is over with. Other players were not. So that's sort of an indication, but we don't have a list of who was interviewed and who was not interviewed. So it's pretty much a guessing
Mike, is it
game
still a
until they
taxi
announce
squad or is it an Uber squad?
It's a Lyft squad. Yeah, they don't trust Uber with their
Food for
cameras
thought,
in the
OGs and
cars.
converts. Thanks for listening. Mike, take it easy, bud.